Well, welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. Today we're going to talk about sea moss. We're going to talk about B vitamins, biotin, multivitamins, botanicals, herbs, gummies, energy drinks, energy bars. And today was triggered by a conversation I had with this really bright, smart, curious woman. She came to us from the podcast. If she's listening, she knows who she is. And it just is a repetitive question and commentary that I get and you get, Dad, around supplements. And so today I thought we could break down supplements, our thoughts around supplements, our thoughts around why people are over-consuming supplements, and how you can navigate, be curious, and use common sense as we try to, I think our intention is to be healthier, but I think we got to have a little bit more information around what to do and how to do it. So welcome to the podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been back in the studio here. Did you know there's 29,000 different supplements?
I would think there'd be more than that.
So 29,000 different. So there might be different brands, but 29,000 different supplements.
That's why we're having this conversation. And I think
And 1,000 new each year.
Well, I think if you're taking notes out there, and first,
I don't take notes when I listen to podcasts.
well, but you do mentally. The first note you mentioned would be curious, asking better questions. That would be the first one. And number two would be where's the common sense? Because the longer we've been in the
Not
business,
in a negative way, but yeah, where's the common sense?
Where's common sense? And the third one what comes with common sense, as we talked about this in the last couple of weeks, is if I just was in Chicago with your mother and watching Kristen and Sean's two boys, and would you give these nutrients, some of these supplements that people are talking about, would you give these to your 2-year-old, 5-year-old, to your 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old? And most of the time the answer would be no. So let's just back up for a second. Be curious, ask better questions, and number two, bring the common sense to the table, and then let's get educated more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could give my kids a Twix bar and look in the ingredients, and there's probably some synthetic vitamins and minerals in there. And I don't think, that's too far of a stretch from what we're going to get into today. Is just because something says it has biotin and it's good for your hair doesn't mean that it's actually good for your health.
Well, and
I
think
or your hair.
Yeah, and I think if we think of food, as we know, food is love, social, medicine, and information in the human body. And then if you think about Nutrition 101, really gets back to what nutrients are we missing, and number two, what are we not absorbing? And the last piece I'll mention here is nutritional deficiencies. So when I sit down with people, I'll say there's 5 levels of nutritional deficiency. Number one is your body starts using reserves that get depleted. So I don't have enough minerals. They get depleted because I'm too acidic. Second level is the body starts stealing nutrients basically from the tissues from the body. So the body starts stealing. Third level is my labs start to change. Homocysteine, high sensitive CRP, testosterone, but my blood work, my labs start to change. Fourth level is the body begins to talk back. Excessive inflammation, I don't sleep anymore, my blood pressure's too high. And the last one is the body starts falling apart. You have kidney stones, you have gout, you have high blood pressure, you have bone problems, connective tissue, inflammation's off the charts. And so when the body's talking back, we never let these deficiencies run the gamut. We start taking stuff.
So hold on, you said labs 3 and body talking back. We explain a lot that the body talks back usually before the labs. Is there a reason why those interchangeable?
They're interchangeable.
Okay. And in your case, you're talking about some subtleties also in the labs more than the drastic ones like you're a type 2 diabetic or heart disease.
But these things start to show
They're
up.
Interchangeable.
Yeah, and many times, as we've talked about, they show up way before they show up in the labs, but they're all together.
Okay.
I mean, it's one big system.
I think that's gold. We'll come back to that. I think we got to get a little bit more on that. So before we get into that, I just want to break down for the listener where we're coming at here from a supplement standpoint. What is a supplement? It could be a vitamin, like a multivitamin or an individual vitamin, like a vitamin D or biotin, like I was talking about. Could be a mineral, which is like calcium or magnesium or iron. Good, and this is where the biggest category could be a botanical or an herb, like echinacea, ginger, caffeine. And I had to kind of look up, like, what is the definition of a botanical? I have a idea when I see that word, but it's something obtained from a plant and used as an additive. And there's either usually a therapeutic effect or a flavor or scent. And so that makes a lot of sense. And these comes in all different fashions: tablets, capsules, gummies, powders, because we're using botanicals and additives so much now. Energy drinks are considered supplements. Energy bars can be considered supplements. So many different forms, many different varieties, 29,000 approximately, whatever that number is, doesn't matter. There's a lot. And I looked up what are the top 10 in 2024 from a supplement standpoint. Some of these are, again, ingredients or botanicals, but I'll read the list. Number 1, ashwagandha. Number 2, berberine, which is a blood glucose modulator. Number 3, B vitamins. 4, collagen supplements for skin, flexibility, joints. Number 5 is creatine. Number 6 is fish oil. Number 7 is magnesium. Number 8 is NAD plus. Number 9 is anything that's a vegan supplement. And then number 10 is vitamin D. I wanted to read this list intentionally. Everything on this list is kind of labeled as kind of the isolated nutrient. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. And so, fish oil is on that, which we'll talk about specifically with cod liver oil. But there's never any mentioning of what's the best form to get these. What's the best form to absorb them, to assimilate them. And that is the number one problem. And that's why we're going to talk about supplements. Again, back to what is a supplement? A supplement is something that you're going to do to complete or enhance something. So you're trying to fill in the holes. And I think that's a great intention. And we'll talk about those holes. But I think there's so much confusion that's why we're doing the podcast. So that's the framework.
Yeah, so get back to, if you sat down with somebody and they didn't know a whole lot, you got to ask the question, where did you learn this from? And why did you decide to take this? And I think if we keep going back to the source, we don't consume nutrients, we consume foods. So if you consume a food, and if you're starting with somebody and you're building a house, we have to start with a foundation. And what nutrients do you need to build the foundation? And then from there, you can start filling in the gaps. But before we start going into filling in the gaps, I got to start building the foundation. If I got that that table, I don't start with one leg. I want to start with 4 legs. What are those? And those are basically macronutrients. That's the food target. So if you're not familiar with the food target, this is why I designed it in the early 90s, is it starts with the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. I would say when I sit down with most people and I ask them, tell me what a carbohydrate is, they have no idea. If I say, okay, we're talking about proteins or fats, walk me through it. So when I start asking these questions, I'm not trying to call them out on the rug, but I am. I want them to understand what they're dealing with. A carbohydrate is amazingly beneficial for gut, brain health, all the stuff we're dealing with today. So if you don't eat carbohydrates, you're not going to have certain benefits of the body. Hence, you're going to have these nutrient deficiencies. I just walked you through them. You're going to have these deficiencies. So a carbohydrate is a sugar. That's all it is. So I say, it's high in sugar. That's what it is. Broccoli has less sugar than a banana. They're both carbohydrates. One's a fruit, one's a vegetable, but they're necessary. So first step is understanding what the macronutrients are. What is a protein? You and I were talking about this before we began. Why does everybody think you need all this excessive amount of protein? You get it from plant and you get it from animal. You and I both eat plant and we both eat animal. But my day is not saying how many protein grams I'm consuming. My first bodybuilding contest, I consumed over 200 grams of protein a day. And my gut was never worse. All you need is enough protein to create this thing called nitrogen balance. And nitrogen balance means you have enough. Again, if you're consuming too much protein, your body's going to become acidic. Your gut's going to get unhealthy. But if you're consuming about a half a gram to 0.75 grams a day per pound of body weight, that is plenty of protein if you're eating spacing out during the day. Hence, I have the raw material to build and repair the body. And last piece is healthy fats. Healthy fats come in saturated fats, that would be coconut, monounsaturated fat, that's almonds and avocados and macadamia nuts. And then you go into your polyfats, which are omega-3s, and hence the fish oil or the cod liver oil, and then flax and chia, and then you go into omega-6s. Everybody, if you do that, the need for filling in these gaps starts to disappear, and then you can start filling in with really powerful superfoods. So that's really when I sit down with people. That's how we begin. I explain about what are we missing, what are we not absorbing, how do we get the gut healthy, understand the macronutrients. This is what you explained right now, and then where are they missing? What are they not willing to? What are they not eating? What are they missing? And so then from there we start to try to fill in the gaps, whether it's with food or real live supplement.
Again, I mean, I just got 10 different podcast topics out of that, which is so good. I want to go back to the top 5 things. I think that is so relevant and missed. But I also want to mention, and I was speaking yesterday, and I was talking about all the information. And the one thing I don't think we need is another podcast. I think we're just so bombarded with information, and I think our podcast has tremendous value, but if you just take snippets and you just read the headlines, again, there's not much depth until you go in there. And I think people just get some of these snippets and then they take action. And so, Gundry's telling people that they can't have fruit, and then he's telling you that you got to have this other thing over here. And then Rogan's got this list of supplements, and Huberman and Skinny Babe and all these different people are. And so it's no wonder we're confused. But
and again, if I'm sitting down with any of those people you just talked to, I'd want to know, tell me what you do every day. Walk me through it. Would you give this to your 3-year-old? The answer would be no.
You want to inject testosterone?
No. Oh. So when I hear this all the time, I'm like, wait a minute, everybody. Everything's going to have an effect. All the stuff you see, it's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect in your kidneys. It's going to have effect on your liver. It's going to affect on your pH. It's going to have an effect. So back to the stuff is like we have to go back and be more curious. Just because such and such takes it doesn't mean that's where you would begin. If you can begin with the basics and build that out, you have a plan you can develop and work with for life.
Today we had a delivery of our cod liver oil, which is a 1,500-pound pallet, and I was having to sled it, so I was pulling it backwards, so hamstrings were getting crushed, and I was thinking, these strong men, especially in like the early 2000s when it was kind of cool, it's probably still cool, but it's kind of shifted. Back to specificity. If you want to look like that, those guys, 350, 400, 500 pounds, less than 8% body fat, some of them, you're probably going to have to do the sauce. You're probably going to be taking some crazy supplements. And you're probably going to be in a world of pain when you're in your 40s and 50s, bad gut health, high inflammation, knees replaced. And so just with a grain of salt, a lot of these folks out there are talking about specificity of something like, how do you become the strongest human on the planet? That's a specific goal. But if your goal is, I want to be strong, but I want to live long, and I want to be healthy, and I want to have low inflammation, and like that whole ecosystem of health is bigger than just one entity, like how much weight can I push? That's when all these holes start to come in. Because break this down for me. The 5 nutrient deficiencies, this is so important. And I was speaking yesterday with this audience, and I'll just be honest, it wasn't my favorite audience I've ever spoke to because they weren't very curious. But I had 2 hours with them, and I try to warm them up to curiosity. The one part of the presentation that they all understood is I said, has everyone heard of creatine? And I kind of said that because a couple people actually are consuming creatine while I'm doing the presentation. Not trying to call anyone out. And I said, here's where I have a problem. Does anybody know how they make that creatine? Or what is that creatine? They looked at me like, well, why would I have to know that?
Well, it's like protein. You can get beef jerky at 7-Eleven. That's protein. Am I going to put beef jerky that's bought at 7-Eleven, that's been sitting there for probably who knows how long, into my body? The answer would be no. If I want to get protein, it ain't coming from beef jerky from 7-Eleven. So it's the same thing with you're talking about creatine. The number one is I step back and I ask, we did a podcast on a while back. What is it? Tell me what it is.
Nobody had a clue.
Let me tell you what it is. It's a cell volumizer. Okay, what does that mean? What draws fluid into the muscles. Okay, so where's that fluid coming from? Well, it's got to come from someplace else. It comes from my blood. It comes from my organs. Is it going to tax my kidneys? You think? Do you think your GFR is going to change by taking creatine? Of course it will. So again, there's so many different holes. And then the word is there's no side effects of it. What are you talking about?
Again, well, my point was, does anybody have any idea, like, if I said, hey, we're stuck in the woods, can you whip me up some creatine? Where do you begin?
Well, again, back to the creatine just for a second. My first question is why? What's the benefit you're looking for from creatine?
Look good in your clothes, strong, muscular tone.
Okay. Do you really think that...
Skin now, hair, joints.
Do you really believe, and people do believe it, I don't. So, and again, I was in the bodybuilding world for, 30 years.
Too long.
A long time. And I saw every single day, and I'm like, I don't need to put that garbage in my body to get up on stage and be tight and look great. But the bottom line is, everybody, you can have your health and still get the performance you're looking for without taking some of this stuff.
All right, take me through these 5 nutritional deficiencies again.
So the first nutritional deficiency always comes back to, and again, make this simple, what nutrients are missing, what are you not absorbing? But they start showing up, and your body slowly starts to deplete itself. It gets
the reserves.
Yep, so the reserves get depleted. So for example, you said earlier, if my body's too acidic, I'm probably going to have less calcium reserves. My minerals are going to be depleted.
The largest mineral in the body, calcium.
Yep, and then if I'm stressed out, my magnesium is going to be low, and I might have trace minerals like selenium and zinc that help your testosterone. Those might be depleted. So the body starts to slowly deplete. You don't see it, but it's happening.
Those reserves that we already have.
You have them. That's why, for example, when people take carbohydrates out of the body, one of the reserves you have is your high-octane jet fuel, and that's called glycogen. It's in your muscles, it's in your liver. So when you need to run like a Ferrari, it's there at your taking. If you're depleting yourself and completely go keto, you're going to deplete those reserves. That's the point. The second level of deficiency is the body starts to slowly draw from the tissues. And again, you're not going to see it, but it's going to slowly start to happen. It starts to kind of cannibalize in itself. And then we move into 3, 4, and 5 could be all together. Your body's talking back to you. You have inflammation. I have gout. I have kidney stones, bad breath, blood pressure's too high. My labs start to change. Your GFR, which is your kidney function, starts to slowly fall. I mean, wake up, everybody. Dialysis clinics are popping up everywhere. It's not because we're eating cleaner and drinking more water. So the labs start to change. And the last one is the body starts to break down. So the body is telling you all the time what's going on, but I got inflammation, so I'm going to take an anti-inflammatory. My blood pressure's too high, take an ACE inhibitor. I can't sleep, I'm taking melatonin or a gummy, Ambien.
Or ashwagandha is one of the fastest growing. So
why are people...
I went through that list.
Yeah,
go.
Why are you taking ashwagandha?
Stress.
Well, what?
Why don't we just...
What?
What would Dr. Phil say of ashwagandha as our cure for stress?
If you didn't listen to Dr. Phil's podcast last week, he talks about that...
So then... The second one is a blood glucose
modulator. But go back to ashwagandha just for a second. Why is that number one?
Because we're so stressed out and anxious.
Okay.
It's a therapeutic.
Would there be another alternative for ashwagandha?
Breathing.
Breathing would kick the crap out of ashwagandha every time.
A break.
Right.
Putting your phone away.
If my kids are stressed, my grandkids are stressed, we know if we can bring humor and breathing and play and all that kind of stuff to it, we're not going to give them ashwagandha.
So I actually like ashwagandha if I was at a spa and I wanted some tea.
Sure.
And I wanted something with
Right.
ashwagandha, but I'm not going to rely on it as my everyday crutch
Yes.
to cover up that I'm overworked, under-rested, no breathing.
It's a small, tiny tool, but you just said it's number one.
Okay, so number 2 is the blood glucose. Again, we're just trying to make sure that cell doesn't get so sensitive.
Okay, so back to the cell. Hold on a second. So that's number 2. So why are we taking something that messes with our glucose?
Because we have such unhealthy cells.
Okay.
Well, we're putting the cart before the horse.
Let's get the cells healthy.
Number 3 is energy, B vitamins, because we're cutting out carbohydrates.
All right, so where do B vitamins come from?
Some grains and different foods, whole foods, and
some real food. So a lot of your B vitamins come from a B complex, what people talk about, 6s and 12s and 9s. They all come. Most of them come from carbohydrates.
Number 4, collagen supplements. We are so fixated on skin, flexibility, joints. But let me pause right here. So here's the thing. I think one of the parts that we forget with collagen supplements is we all want better hair, skin, and nails. Who doesn't? Okay? And we need collagen. I'm not arguing that we don't. And then we talk about joints and the connection there, and you're saying, well, that's an inflammation thing. Sure, it's some fluid stuff and all that stuff, but if we're not attacking the inflammation first and just trying to mask it with the collagen. But the other thing is, what happens when we put a bunch of collagen supplements into our gut? Doesn't like that, which then leads to more inflammation because our gut is not thriving. And so I see us trying these things that 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know the time that it always is, but might reverse itself in a negative way because we're not going after the source of the problem, and now we're aggravating. And then number 5 is creatine, and number 6 is fish oil. And the thing that I get very passionate about the fish oil is it's not all created equal. Actually, we're working on the certification to prove that we actually have cod liver oil in our body. Same thing that olive oil was going through and still does go through is I think 40 to 60% of olive oil is counterfeit. I think the estimate is between 40 and 60% of fish oils are not fish oils. It's olive oil. It's cheaper oil.
Yeah. Well, again, one of the things that you sent me, I think you do this to aggravate me, but you sent me a little clip on this guy talking about bad mouthing cod liver oil.
Carnivore guy, Dr. Paul Salentino.
I don't no, I don't think it was him. It was another.
What was he doing?
He had the glasses on, and he's talking about. Anyway, the point of it is, you're not understanding. Like, first question is, number one, tell me what cod liver oil is. What is it? So it's the cod that's line caught in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, and the livers are frozen on the boat. And so that processing allows high levels of vitamin D3 naturally in the cod. That's why we choose cod liver oil over fish oil.
They extract the oil from the cod in its natural ratio.
In the natural ratio.
Vitamin A, vitamin D, EPA, DHA.
Nothing has been manipulated. It is the natural.
95% of fish oils have been manipulated.
So when people are comparing cod liver oil to ours, or fish oil, which mostly is sardines and anchovies, and it can be healthy. In a gel tablet, you're not taking it out. So we have to ask the question, if anybody says to you in the future, I'm taking XYZ, you ask them, what is that? And number 2, where does it come from? Those are your 2 big steps. You were to the food expo, and they were talking about athletic greens, and you're talking about, or some of these other things, and you're asking, what's in athletic greens?
Tell me how you got spirulina in there. Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Where did you get it?
No idea.
And then what's the volume of it?
No idea.
So if you don't know that...
Is it actually spirulina, or is it like broccoli greens.
Or you said it's kale greens.
Or kale green. I mean, there's so many different
That's what
ways.
makes it inexpensive.
Or maybe it's a cheaper algae.
It's a cheaper. So that's what everybody's got to start asking. The question is, what is it? And number two, where does it come from? And then how much is it? What's the volume of the nutrient in it? And if you can ask those questions, then you have an answer to every one. And that's why we get excited about this, because we know the difference in our cod liver oil. When you're throwing everybody under the bus, what are you talking about? It's line caught, Dutch Harbor, Alaska. Livers are frozen on the boat. Has pre-resolving mediators, immune system. There's nothing been doctored of that. By the way, it's organic lemon.
Well, let's do this. I wasn't planning on doing this, but the top 10 list, we got a stress issue, glucose issue, energy issue, joints, skin, hair, nails, inflammation, muscular, relaxation with magnesium, NAD with living longer, vegan, want to be plant-based, and then vitamin D, more vitamin D. I look at this 10 list, and let's just say it costs $150 a month, probably more if you were trying to get all of these. For $5 a day, and we've been talking about this for a long time, we can cover all 10 of these by going to Whole Foods. Now, let me tell you how simple it is, and also then there's some specifics that's why we promote cod liver oil and some of these greens. Number one, if we want to get more magnesium, we eat foods higher in magnesium. Chia seeds, dates, raisins, figs.
Cacao nibs.
Yep. Enjoy them. Find different ways.
That's how you get it.
Do not get it from a synthetic supplement. There's
Epsom salt baths.
Epsom salt baths. Vitamin D. It's called sunlight. Okay, if you can't get sunlight, there's foods and nutrients. Specifically, the cod liver oil has vitamin D3. I don't think people should be consuming vitamin D3 supplements like they are now.
It's so difficult to absorb, and then the volume is so high. And so when people are taking vitamin D, many times they're taking away. I had a guy way back in the day, his lips were starting to go numb.
So let's tackle the B vitamins, the collagen supplements, and the creatine all in one. And then there's no reason to not take, in my opinion, somebody's brand of cod liver oil over any other fish oil. So collagen supplements, think about inflammation, think about cell health, think about recovery.
How does the body...
Vitamin A.
Yeah, so think about, just step back for a second. How does the body repair and recover? So it does it through lots of different things, but food is the big one. And intelligent movement. And then when you go into that, intentional rest. That's how you do it. So when I think about how do I get my body to move better, feel better, age better, it really gets back to that. It gets back to intentional rest, more intelligent movement. I've done stupid stuff over the years movement-wise, but I'm really a lot smarter in that. And so we spend a lot of time doing restorative type movements, and play is a big one. And then really understanding the power of food and how the body heals and self-corrects, because food is medicine, food is information.
So I think we've gotten to the point of there's just so much out there. And so back to the reason I was motivated to do this podcast, again, this very smart and curious and somebody looking for some change in her health came to us and asked some good questions. And without saying who she is, she got some bad information. Struggling with some issues, went to see somebody. That person said, you need to eat more protein, cut out the carbohydrates, do Fairlife milk, do protein powders, do all these things. And next thing you know, she's more inflamed. Her gut is a mess. And now she's trying to work backwards. And she's on quite a few supplements. And it really pains me because what I was explaining to her is instead of focusing on what you shouldn't eat, so she's cut out gluten, she's cut out dairy, she's cut out this, cut out that, can't have this, no peanuts, more allergic to this, have an autoimmune compromised system. I said, we need to focus on the foods that you're missing. And you said it right away, if you're relying on the reserves and you're stealing from the other thing, let's focus on the foods that we should be eating. And so let's talk about the two nutrients that we think, number one, I'm going to talk about the first one. It's the secret nutrient that 95% of the population is missing. Number two is going to be this nutrient that's the oldest food on the planet. And so the first one is omega-3s. When you think about omega-3s, I'll make it real simple. Omega-3s are responsible for the health of the cell. Point blank. And if we're talking about cell volumizing and blood glucose and repairing the body, sure, we need to make that cell healthy. Well, when we start to ask these deeper questions, well, how do we make that cell healthy? It requires omega-3 fatty acids for that cell membrane to be soft.
I mean, again, back to common sense. Why do they put DHA in every infant formula on the planet? Because DHA is your omega-3 fat, which is found in cod liver oil. And the highest quality source of DHA is back to the cod liver oil. That's why the genesis was way back in the day. What most people are missing is this thing called omega-3 fats. And it's for brain health, for heart health, inflammation, and hormones.
And, I think we have a strong following that's really trying to prevent and tweak and maybe mitigate disease. I've talked to you about this recently. I really have this strong desire to get the younger generation that's doing these pre-workouts, post-workouts, protein powders, collagen, peptides, creatine, to realize this is right in front of them. You don't need to do this fancy, trendy, influencer type of stuff. If you can get some omega-3s, the body is amazing.
I mean, the NFL is I'm listening today on ESPN, and they're talking about, once you get past a handful of quarterbacks, they're not there anymore. So what do you choose? And the guy says, well, you can always go with an offensive tackle, because an offensive tackle you'll have forever. It's no different. Let's start with the basics. If you can build that foundation, which is your omega-3,
not going to be able to run without a tackle.
You got to have a tackle.
So
quarterback doesn't have time, got to have a tackle. So this is the tackle for the human body. You have to have this thing called omega-3 fats. And here's a crazy thing we never talk about. How many times have you gone to your doctor and say, hey, I'd like to get an omega-3 saturation level in my blood test? They don't even know what you're talking about. But there's a blood test you can get. It's called omega-3 saturation level. And we know with all the mental health issues that if your omega-3 saturation level goes up, you're in the 10, 12 range, you're going to have less mental problems than you will if you're back in the 2 and 3, which most people are deficient in omega-3s. So again, there's so many benefits of it. That's where you begin foundationally. Every one of my clients, every one of them comes in, I talk about water, I talk about the foods, and then from there, the first step is you got to do the cod liver oil. And if they're complete vegan, then we're going to go to flax and chia. But that's what I start with everybody on. And you don't have to take vitamin D3. It's already in it. That's where we go.
And we're on a mission. We're going to try to continue to make that as trendy and cool because we've seen the effects. And unfortunately for us, we tend to get people ready to make those changes after they've already maybe gone down some paths. But the key is you can do these things. I'm 37 years old. My job isn't to avoid or get off my SAT medication. My job is never to go on it.
Yeah, it's thrive. It's like back to Harry Bender. We're trying to thrive. I think the other thing, too, we got to think about, too, is I always make this claim now. I mean, you turn 67 in the fall. You've never had anybody not get off a cholesterol medication if they're willing to make to them these steps. And how do they do that? They bring the omega-3 fats to the party. So then the health, your LDL, your HDL, your total cholesterol, your triglyceride to HDL ratio, everything starts to get in balance. Hence, there's no need. You don't have a deficiency in cholesterol meds.
It's back to that thing. It's not.
So it can repair that deficiency, which is that lab we just talked about.
Yeah. Okay. So omega-3s, again, we'll keep hitting that. Number 2 is chlorophyll. And when you think about chlorophyll, the oldest foods, how everything survives, are chlorophyll foods. Specifically algae and grass. And there's different types of algae, and there's also sea vegetables and different things in salt water versus fresh water. And so we talk about spirulina chlorella. Spirulina chlorella is 2 types of algae. Spirulina is actually a cyanobacteria, not really an algae, but it's kind of categorized. And they have different properties, similar properties. One is the oldest food on the planet, and one is one of the earliest superfoods on the planet. And then frozen wheatgrass juice, which is the highest source of minerals that you can consume.
Back up for a second and just let the audience understand, like spirulina everybody's talking about gut health today. Walk us through a little bit more about what does it do for the gut?
Spirulina, chlorella, or just
Just
each one?
each one, and then that's why we combine the two.
So chlorella is the oldest food on the planet. So it's an algae, and the benefit of chlorella is that it is a builder. So it actually helps to build your immune system. As it has nucleic acid, the chlorella growth factors are more concentrated.
So again, that's that RNA and DNA in the cell.
Yep. And
So again, that's nucleic acid.
So it's building that immune system. We have to build it. When you think about the green of a plant, the chlorophyll of a plant, it is the plant's immune system. So when we eat the plant's immune system, we actually build our immune system. It's also a detoxifier. So the fiber in chlorella, and that's why you want to have broken cell chlorella, because if you don't absorb it. That fiber actually attaches to heavy metals and other toxins and helps eliminate it out of the body. And so that's why it's a detoxifier. That's why it's a builder. Spirulina, think of that more as an energizer, cyanobacteria. It's very energizing, specifically for like endurance and muscular endurance, even cardiovascular endurance. So I look at spirulina more on that energy, the B vitamins, antioxidants, and then chlorella is going to be more on the immune system, detoxification. In combination, they have so much similar properties, but combined they.
So if I'm trying to get building my body, that would be something I would be.
Yeah, there's more. Again, I didn't even mention this as a byproduct, but it's actually the front and center. It's highest source of protein, plant or animal. 60% of chlorella, or about 60 to 70%.
And it's not going to put stress on my kidneys or my GFR and all the stuff that comes with my gut health.
It's bioavailable. It's very
right.
Again, it's what it is. It's
what it is, correct.
Again, and it doesn't taste very good. So this is a key thing. You say, well, you're talking about capsules and less powders. Well, if you could have fresh algae, that would be best. I've had it. It's not good. It lasts maybe a week. So you have to process it a little bit, and you process it into a powder. And what I find with the powder is not the best vehicle, because you either have to add something to make the taste better, or you're going to have to choke it down. And so you can actually take pressure, and you pressurize the powder into a tablet, and you swallow it. It's easy.
And you can chew it. I mean, the grandkids chew it. We don't really recommend it, but you could. But that again, it's an easy, very inexpensive, super powerful. That's why we went down that path.
And then the last one is frozen wheatgrass juice. Again, this is the minerals. This is where you're going to get these minerals that maybe you're deficient in or you're sabotaging. And more specifically with the frozen wheatgrass juice, it's a live, living food. It will last less than a day if you put it on the counter.
And it turns color while you're looking at it. It's oxidizing.
That means it's an antioxidant. It means that it's got prebiotics, probiotics. It's very, very alkaline. It has no gluten because the wheat has not turned into wheat flour. It's still the grass. And again, if there's one superfood that to me can help people with some really healing therapeutic things, there's not much better than frozen wheatgrass juice. And if you want to hear the story of the partners that we have up in Canada, that's how they started in the 70s. His wife had cancer and he didn't want to go down the traditional route. I'm not saying that wheatgrass cures cancer. I'm just saying there is a...
You're just trying to put a body in a better position to heal and self-correct.
Right. So those are the two nutrients that most people are missing, omega-3s and chlorophyll. And if you build that foundation from a supplement standpoint, my next step is now we start to eat more food.
More live foods.
More live foods.
More variety.
Carbs, proteins, and fats in the best quality. That's why we don't recommend a protein powder. That's why we don't recommend cutting out carbohydrates, because the body will know what to do when you give it the foundations. Unfortunately, our food system has almost zero omega-3s.
Yeah, and one last couple things here. So our society is struggling with sleep. So why are we doing that? Because I think a lot of it has to do with we cut carbohydrates out of the body. And a big part of serotonin makes melatonin, is all made in the gut.
Well, carbohydrates are cooling. If you're hot, you're not going to sleep.
Right.
So your brain's going to be on, your nerves are going to be aggravated. You might look good. You might have strength. You might be energized, but you're not going to be able to
can't calm the mind, can't sleep, can't relax.
Eyes are bugging out because you haven't slept. So again, back to the genesis of this podcast as we wrap it up. Again, with this woman that I'm trying to help, she's on too many supplements. She got bad education on, the stereotypical more protein, eat clean. But at the end of the day, it's not about getting rid of anything. It's about adding what you're missing. Nobody's missing protein. I haven't met anyone that's missing protein. These bodybuilders and influencers and six-pack abs and bikini bodies, sure, if you eat just protein, you will lose weight, but you're not going to be healthier. And from her standpoint, she really has an inflammation. And this is what I wanted to end today. Understand this. If you have too much going in the body, whether it's supplements or processed foods, that gut's going to get inflamed. And so when you think about being acidic, filling the body with more acidic, which could be protein or processed foods, that's going to lead to a bad gut. And when we have a bad gut, we're going to lead to inflammation. And so acid always leads to inflammation. And the root cause for most of these disease and illnesses, and when you're talking about the body's talking back to you and the body's falling apart, kidney stones, that's inflammation speaking. And so I think the message today is about more food, less supplements. That's why we call the two nutrients that we think most people are missing superfoods, because they're not just supplements. They're really food in the most minimally processed way to get you those nutrients. And you have to build your foundation before you can start doing these crazy things. If you're building your foundation, you want to have ashwagandha tea, or if you want to have some type of herb or botanical, great. What I see people doing is they're spending way too much money and they forgot to build that foundation. So have a great week. We're always here to help. info@ontargetliving.com, and we'll see you again next time.